One, two. Oh boy. Well, aloha. And, well, for the good majority of peeps don't have an issue with what I'm going with, especially since I'm a minute late. Well, it means that they could just feel comfortable, at least. And that's the thing that does matter a lot to me. And, I'm always here, at least. So, what's it? Checking all the other websites and see my presence just to know what's an up and up if you are want to be aware and be comfortable with my awareness or safety and health. Besides that, let's just get on with it. This story is just revelation. So where I left off has to be with two of the fellows, Bob Ross and his mentor, on being stars, working each other, helping each other, and they are becoming famous because of the work together. Okay, yeah, we went through here making the Bob Ross part 1. He got out of the military and he decided to become a mentor. Okay. Yes. Okay, yeah, this is the part I left off. So, where should I go? Just read back here. Talking about Bob here in this paragraph, and then later Bill, his mentor, and now we just follow up here. He, Bill, had already had more than his share of the dark witness firsthand on the killing fields of Europe. Bill had no desire to join the military, but the Nazi war machine mandated the service of everyone who could fight, including a carefree wandering artist like he was at the time. He ended up serving on both the Eastern and Western fronts, was wounded in action, and eventually found himself in an American POW camp in France. He integrated himself with the American officers the only way he knew how, by painting portraits of them and their family members. Those men later helped him immigrate to Canada, and from there he made his way to the United States. Ever since the war, Bill considered every day as a blessing just to be alive, especially now that, in the late 1970s, he had found fame and a little fortune as a PBS painting celebrity, so famous that the following year he'd win an Emmy for his TV show, The Magic of Oil Painting. Alrighty. As much as Bob and Bill may have appeared radically different on the surface, on a more fundamental level, it's not hard to see why they hit it off. Both had military backgrounds and no small misgivings about them, or about that. Both were easy to laugh and quick to crack a joke, often of the ribald variety. Both were born showmen and storytellers given over the exaggeration bordering on fancy. Perhaps most importantly, they both had an inestimable awe of Mother Nature and all of the situations, from the trees and lakes of their paintings to the various animals that later roamed their respective homesteads. When the workshop ended, Bob was changed man in two critical respects. The first that was his passion for painting had turned into an obsession. Shortly thereafter, he was sent north to Elkson Air Force Base in Fairbanks, Alaska, and every last minute of his free time was consumed by art and business and the business of art. He sketched greeting cards, he nominated paintings for fundraisers and visiting dignitaries. He developed an entire venture around landscape paintings on gold pans, precisely the Alaskan themed keepsake that sold like hotcakes to tourists and locals alike. The second and unrelated change in Bob's life was more practically a job offered to work for Bill's company when he left Now, when he got out of the military, Bill wanted more instructors to fan out across the country and spread the gospel of Bill, as well as help show his line of custom-made products for the Alexander technique. Oversized brushes, a flat knife of Bill's own design, and the base magic white paint that was the foundation of the Alexander technique. When Bob hit his 20s of active duty, he hung up his uniform and was free of Uncle Sam's grip for the first time since he had enlisted at age 18. "I made a deal with my wife," he later explained to the Orlando Sentinel. "I've asked for 1 year. If I run out of money before that, I'll get a real job and we'll act like normal people." I never went home. He left Steve behind with his second wife, Jane, a Defense Department civilian, and headed into the unknown. Alrighty then. After several months of manual labor and mixing and canning paints at Bill's headquarters in Salem, Oregon, Bob finally hit the road as one of Bill's 2 traveling master apprentices to spread Bill's technique. And so his mind of magic painting products. Life as a traveling art instructor was anything but easy. Bob was on the road north of 8 months a year. He showed up at a cheap hotel or a church or a civic center or one of the countless mom and pop hobby art stores that dotted the nation in the days before Michael's Hobby Lobby. Upon arrival, he covered tables, set up workstations, collected the $20 to $30 class fee, sell painting supplies, and then teach the actual class. Yeah. At the end of the day, he break it all down, pack it up, and move on. Rinse, repeat. Oh. Bob had long lasted the basics of Alexander technique, but now he was time to master the performative elements. Bill had developed a particular vernacular centered around happy little anything, almighty everything. He exhorted his audience to fire in from bombastic gusto that felt like encouragement by sheer brute force. Bill expected his apprentices to use the same language that had struck such a chord with his audiences. Bob honed his banter in workshop after workshop, just as Bill had long done years earlier. Yeah. But he did so his far fuller voice with his evolving laid-back style, calling encouragement by pure and self-affirmation. He billed himself as the Happy Alaskan as Bill's nickname. Nickname. And Bill on Bill's nickname, the Happy Painter, a buckier Bob could eventually assume for himself. He embraced Bill's happy little verbiage even as he dropped Bill's aggressive fire-in tagline. Oh, I'm going to go on more with his voice. I think I'm getting the hang of it. For the time being, Bob was fully brought in his role as Bill's disciple and keen to give Bill's the credit he deserved. Bob dedicated his second house book to Bill in glowing terms. In an age when he said that there was no heroes, I feel more fortunate to have been inspired and influenced by a giant in the field of art. Bill Alexander, he had been my mentor and friend and has been so instrumental in all of that I have accomplished. Yeah. That sentiment, however, was last much longer, and in the turning point, or in the start of it at least, came through a horrific turn of events. One that, in another irony, truly set Bob in this multi-decade of accent. Oh boy. Yeah. Okay. Gotta practice trying to get that whiplash voice. The event that in many ways kick-started Bob Roth Inc. was any parent's worst nightmare, the loss of a child in the summer of 1981, right as Bob was mustering out of the Air Force. That nightmare came true from Auntie and Walty Kowalski, parents of 5 living in a modest middle-class life on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. The Kowalskis have married young and started a family in short order with 5 children in only 9 years. Walt worked for the Central Intelligence Agency, and those who know him said he sometimes told tales of his time in the agency, from From growing an anti-sultan about eating monkey brains and Viet Cong to taking a Cold War victory lap around the Kremlin on the work trip. With Bob many years later, according to those same people, Walt's defining feature... What? Yeah, the language also making me trip up. Walt's defining feature, what jumped out immediately upon meeting him, were his eyes. Eyes that were cold and calculating, shark's eyes. Shark's eyes. Shark's eyes, But yeah. But yeah, the coldness coexist with another attribute of everyone's flagged, his utter devotion to his life and his willingness to do anything for her. That devotion came out in spades after the oldest son was killed in a car accident at the heartbreaking age of 25. As he fell into depression, the sort of that left her in an almost chaotic state. All I could do was lie on the couch and watch television, she later told 538. And that's how she, like Bob, first became aware of Belle Alexander as he pummeled into his canvas with his giant brushes and told her that she could do and be anything she wanted, and the world was a happy little place full of wonder and awe. It was a ray of sunlight in the dark, tumultuous storm that had enveloped her, a glimmer of hope in the otherwise hopeless experience. Desperately to help his wife, Walt called up Bill's company to find a workshop she could take. Alas, they weren't anything with the Gaster. Yeah. But one of Bill's instructors were teaching in a class in Clearwater, Florida. The instructor name was Bob Ross, and neither of the Kowalskis was heard of him. But one had. Get up, get in the car, we're going. Oh, now I'm getting closer to the Mickey Mouse version. Walt ordered. Auntie did as she was told, and they drove 1,000 miles south to the outskirts of Tampa to meet this so-called Bob Ross. She showed up in the hotel at the appointed time along with a few dozen other students. Bob arrived and told them about his background. He had trained with Bill, and that he loved about painting. By the point, Bob had shed his military bearings and become a true man of the 80s, with a bit of a hippie 70s throwback vibe for good measure. He had ditched the swim-swept James Dean haircut that he carried since he was a teen and was instead sporting the fizzy man perm, by which so much ink could later be spilled. At the time, it wasn't nearly as the literal heights it would eventually reach, and nor was it part of the any clever forward-looking market scheme. Rather, in the early 1980s, perms were in style for men and women, and in Florida, hairdressing had convinced Bob it was particularly low maintenance. Auntie was smitten at first sight. I was so memorized by Bob, she later explained to NPR. Somehow he lifted me up out of my trash, and I just think that Bob knew how to woo people. I said, let's put it in a bottle and sell it. Yeah, now it's starting to become a bit of a more sassy, but not much of a... Was it here to go? Mario, and then... Mario sound. Or pretty much a very white speaky voice. Yeah. It requires practice, but after all, I've just been practicing with this voice that I just created like in the few minutes. That's a good sign. And yeah, it's almost time for me. So, yeah, this is where I left off. So, Bob Ross with James Dean. Probably a handsome, young, or dashing single parent of his child, and then becomes also a star himself. That he also still did stream today. Other than that, so long, or no, long and aloha.